we were teasing because we were getting eaten by alligators all along the way. And what we would say is, we're turning them into snapping turtles that won't kill you. They hurt.
It might take a finger off, though. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I love it. This way up. Yeah. We're way up. This way up, pointy end up. We're standing up. I like it.
Yeah,
we got to knock on ourselves a little bit, right?
Well, you can only go up from here, right? You can only go up from here. It doesn't matter if it was, the start of this whole thing and being a think tank and coming up with inventions, and then, the famous term, pivoted the whole company.
Yeah.
And did those things. But take me back to
this way up,
to those days of the ground floor before we were going up. D.C., I think it was, somewhere in Maryland.
Oh, wow. Geez, Josh, we're going to talk about the beginning.
That's the ground floor. That's where we got to go. It's only up from there.
Yeah, the ground floor was a dinner meeting with Cam Gaffarian. I went to meet him in D.C., and we went to this little restaurant before an interview, and he was interviewing me to be the president of X Energy, his energy company, and to develop a nuclear reactor. And so before the interview, which was a night interview with the guys in the company, and it was going to be like from, 8 to 11 or so, we went to dinner at about 6 o'clock. And he said, "Steve, what are you passionate about?" I said, "What? That's an odd question." But that's Cam, if you ever talk to him. He's like, "What are you passionate about?" I says, "Well, I got this idea. To create a think tank that would solve intractable problems around the world and use the human spaceflight engineering methodologies and practices." And you know what he said to me? This phrase will live on, because he says, "It would be a shame, Steve, if the music in your head was never played. Why don't we just do it?" Right?
Maybe that music was "Fly Me to the Moon" at the
That's
point.
right. That's right. In the end, it was the entrepreneur spirit to go off and do that. And so I didn't have anything but an idea. And we shook hands on a roughly $10 million investment right then. It happened, like in a matter of about 30 minutes of conversation.
And Cam just kind of brings that out in most folks, that spirit and what's in your head and bringing that out.
Yeah, he sees in people their passion, and he puts people in places that they can go exercise their passion. So he's quite the enabler, and you wonder why he's got some successful businesses. Is because he's ferreted out the passion in people, and he loves to endorse people who say, "Give me the ball, let me run, let me go do this. I'll take care of it all. Just give it to me, and I'll take care of it." And if you have that attitude, you can go far, and he'll endorse you and enable that. And he did. And then so we went. We went, and I was like, "Oh my God!" And I started with a group of people. We were incubating this idea. We called ourselves the Hard Eight. It was 8 of us that were going to start the business, and I just had gotten funding. $10 million of funding for the business idea. And I didn't tell anybody what we were going to do. And the Hard Eight ended up not wanting to leave the agency or not wanting to leave their jobs, or, it was just, we kind of broke up at that. It was a critical moment. And in the end, one of the Hard Eight was Tim Crane. And I went to see him in his kitchen. In his house. I knocked on the door during the day and went in there, and I says, "Tim, I'm out of the Hard Eight. I don't know. It's just falling apart, and people have different interests, and I don't think we're gonna be able to pull it off." And he said, "Well, Steve, I'm leaving the agency anyway. I'm going. I'm going to do something I have my little company called Cattern, a little town in Arkansas, I think it is. He formed a little company, and he says, I'm going to go no matter what. I says, well, why don't we do this together? Just you and I and Cam. And we shook hands on the deal, and Tim was in. And here we are, 11 years into it, still together, with the accomplishment of building such a fantastic company and having landed on the moon. You know, just wow. You couldn't have written a script to be that, right?
I mean, it didn't start out as looking up at the stars and thinking, yeah, we'll be there eventually, right? You, Tim, and Cam were working on intractable problems, right? And we were working on autonomous drone flight, right?
That's
Tiburon.
right. Well, I think of your journey and how you got to this company, which is quite amazing too. So you should probably say something about that. But yeah, we started, I worked and was kind of formally trained, if you will, in how to run a think tank. And I was on a NASA think tank called the Blue Sky Visioning, it was, and there was only a handful of people that were accepted into that club to go think about big problems and how to move humans off the planet. That was great. And then for some other organizations in the government, I went and led a think tank for them. And I had about 12 people. Some of those were in the Heart 8, by the way, 12 people that would compete their ideas to solve these intractable problems in a think tank. So that was the basis of the company, was a think tank. Can you solve engineering problems, like really difficult problems? Because other government agencies were asking me to do it. NASA was asking me to do it. So why not start a company to do that? So we came into the company thinking about what's outside the gate of Johnson Space Center. Well, there's energy industry, oil and gas. There's healthcare with the Texas Medical Center. It's 10 times larger than the next largest medical center in the world. And there's aerospace. And so why not start where you are? Reading some Zen philosophy, it's like, at the time I was into those kind of thoughts. Begin where you are. The journey is the first step from where you are to where you want to go. This way up, right? So we took that one step, and that step was out of NASA to form a think tank that started working on problems. And the first week of the company, all right, here we go. It's like Jerry Seinfeld, for those of you who watch it, and George and Jerry are going to write a sitcom. And here we go. They got a blank piece of paper and a pencil, and they're going to write down their idea. And it says, okay, George walks in. Okay, we got it. We're rolling. And then they fall asleep, and they can't write this sitcom. So it's kind of funny. That's what Tim and I did when we sat down in the conference room of a borrowed office, SGT office. We said, all right, we're gonna scratch out this business plan. Well, what do we need? Well, we got to go get some. It'd be cool to get some paper and some pens to write with. So let's go out to the store and buy some stuff. So we went to this craft store. We bought a big roll of brown paper and a bunch of markers and little sticky notes and all these kind of brainstorming kind of little tools. And we come back to the office and we start drawing on a table on this brown paper. Let's start with these ideas and these robotics ideas and these oil and gas ideas and sticky notes everywhere. Man, we were so naive at the time.
Hey, but that technology footprint at the beginning, I mean, that serves just the same. I mean, we weren't solving problems to go to the moon, but the idea of creating the technologies, how do you make things that don't exist, kind of served very well moving forward, 2018, 2019 of, we have a focus on the moon. We also have a background of developing the technologies to solve those problems, right? Is it applicable from, drones and medical, oil and gas solutions? The idea of creating those technologies, the ability to do them, it still applies to aerospace and getting to the moon. Is there a relationship there?
Absolutely. I think, you could consider it wandering in the wilderness for a period of time to discern what you're really about. I mean, we weren't going to develop a coherent business plan with markers and brown paper in a conference room in a matter of days. It took 5 years 24 inventions, 4 spin-out ventures, constantly pivoting the company to find where we fit in the world, in the ecosystem. Were we a services business? Oh my God, look how hard it is to take a medical device all the way through its certification process to the end. That takes a lot of capital, right? And we didn't have a lot of capital. So we were learning along the way. And along the way, as we were learning and we were exciting with all these inventions that we were coming up with, people were empowered to come up with ideas. We'd have what we called Q branch. If you ever watched James Bond, Q is the one who comes up with the inventions, right? And he has a laboratory full of things that explode or disappear or whatever. And so that was our think tank, was called Q branch. And what we were able to do was we were able to gather the talent and begin the model of a prototype organization that we thought we wanted to be. We started adding people like Scott Tamlin, Sean Stewart, Joel Busa, Wyatt Johnson, like these people you see today that were passionate about space joined us when we were a think tank.
That's the special sauce. The way when we were so small, right? The way that people share their stories of how they started working here, absolutely hilarious. If you go into additive lab and you're like, "Hey Ben, you've been here forever, man. Like, how'd you get here?" He goes, "Oh, just one day you work for me now." And it's those stories. Even like when I started, it was I was at work for my other employer, and it was, "Hey, I want you to come in and do this," because I'd missed your emails asking me for it while I was on military training. And it's just like those things, that baseline from back then, and that thought of, hey, we're here, it's technology, we're making problems. And they're sitting in mission control, achieving, the ultimate milestone just a few months ago. Is that core.
That core, and like you said, the way we worked together, we put early on, we had in the Boeing building, office building, where everybody sits in cubicles, we tore all that out. And we put a mechatronics lab, which is, mechanisms, electronics, and software. You put all that together. It's called mechatronics, right? It was a buzzword back then. So we built a mechatronics lab where we could work, solder, make things right in the office building. Tomas Zielinski ran a wire out the window and up the building to get a GPS signal so we could develop some drone technologies. But what we had was the engineers, subject matter experts. We were an engineering company from the start with technicians working in the lab side by side. I think Hunter was doing graphics for proposals and art for the drones and different things in that same lab that we were working and building things. So everybody was together in this integrated sense, working in one direction. And our meetings were all hands.
Yep.
Every week, everybody was in the same room. We were that small. And we would go around the table, what are you working on? What are you working on? And I think that spirit of the company when we were that young and fresh and new is still here as the basis of the business now. We're 400 people. So we're 400 people that acts like a company of 20, 25, and I think that's spot on. And I think, I have these discussions about organizational change and where we're going and how to scale. And it's always don't bring me a textbook solution. It has to be a personally developed organization based on the tenets of what's working, what's not working. How do we tailor it to who we are so we don't lose our culture? I've been adamant with Jade about that, and let's make that
in HR, like making that HR function culture. Right.
So anyway, I start rambling there, but that's kind of what we did. And so the key to all those inventions was the ability to pivot. And, we had to stick to it. We couldn't just take this one and that one and this one and that one. We weren't making it. We were making, single-digit millions in revenue, which sounds like a lot, but not when you're feeding a company and trying to grow a billion-dollar business, right? So what we did was we said, we have something with these drones. And we formed Intuitive Aviation. And we started going after building our own drones in-house. And we were doing that up here at Space Center, Spaceport Houston in the old building. and we were fly the drones and out in the rice fields, and that was crazy.
Muddy,
Yeah,
hot.
hot, muddy, mosquitoes, and we'd crash sometimes. We'd fly successfully sometimes. We had no money. We were over budget. We were late. And we're trying to file with the FAA to get approval to get certified for beyond line of sight. They turned us down and kept turning us down and kept turning us down. And, to this day, you don't see drones flying in the airspace beyond line of sight. The FAA still hasn't approved them except for military drones. So it was a gift or a godsend that we wandered in the wilderness for 5 years. We picked a team and we learned how to work together and understood what it took to make the culture of this business it is today. And in walks two friends from Constellation program, the old NASA moon program, where we had a 1.5 launch solution. One went to station, the single stick, and then the SLS version, the super heavy, went to the moon. And the Orion capsule was part of that. Those guys, that program was canceled inside of NASA. And the program manager, Jeff Hanley, and his consultant, who was a Marine, brilliant guy, Jason Hundley, his company now is Crossbow. They walked in to our office building and sat Tim and I down and says, you know what? NASA's coming out with this lunar lander procurement. You guys are the best lunar lander company in the country.
While you're making drones and med tech
Yeah.
and oil and gas.
We said, what? We're not even a lunar landing company. They said, well, you better think about it because you're the best ones. So take a look at this procurement. It was clips in the early days, the clips procurement. So we bid on it, and we want a seat at the table with the other 8 vendors. 9 companies won the Clips Award that you could fight for and propose against and win missions to the moon. So, and most of the company knows this, but those 2 people had faith in us, having seen what we did at NASA, and said, you can do it. And they believed in us. And we bid and we won. Then we bid the first task order and we won. We bid the next one and we won. We bid the next one and we won. Like, we were good at it. We knew what we were doing. We didn't know half of what we needed to know, but we knew how to write the proposals and interface with NASA, and we kept winning. So we're the most winningest vendor in that pool. The pool was expanded to 14, and we had 3 shots on goal to make it work. 2 of them yet to fly, and the first one a success, wild success. So that pivot of the company to our natural DNA of moving, flying in space and doing space exploration and pioneering where we're going in space. We just needed that moment in history to turn for us. And we were set on our course, all the way up from that moment on. And that was in January of 2018.
4 years to get to the pad. It was a lot. It was a lot to get there. I mean, people can focus in on, you look up at the moon, like, Odie's up there. But it's hard not to lose sight of like the 4 years, whether it's, the tank technology development, the engine tech development, optical navigation development, like all those core technologies were 4 years of, I'm not the engineer, but I perceived it to be very, very hard work.
Yeah, it was tough. It was really tough. And you know what? I never lost faith that we were going to be able to do it. I just believed we were going to do it. It was going to take us a little more time and a little more money. Some people didn't believe we were ever going to fly. Those problems, especially the tank problem, was very, very tough. I worked on a lot of technical problems on the space shuttle, on the space station, and in the Constellation program, the moon program, in human spaceflight when I was director of engineering. Very hard problems. Nothing as hard as a tank problem. That was the hardest problem, the one thing that was going to keep us on the ground. And we broke that technology barrier, and we now have the only linerless composite cryogenic tank in the world, and it works for us. And it worked on the first mission after all that hard work. So our testing program, our people, the way we're organized, the way we disposition risk and problems, all that fed to a success here. And really, really was tremendous. 4 years to get to that point. Wow.
What was it like watching launch? Yeah, you were at OSB2?
Yeah.
What was that feeling like?
That was incredible. There was so many supporters, right? There was NASA, brass, all the way up to the top. There was friends and family. There was other employees. There were other officers. There were business associates, our supply chain vendors, politicians, all watching. And I was running around in between press briefings, give a speech at OSB2, run through the crowd, run out to the press site, give a little talk there, run
got
back.
You a golf cart there.
I had the golf
cart. Shout out to Lee J over at KSC.
That was pretty good. But then came back, and when we saw that lift off, and then we saw it, the fairing separate, and then the return of the booster. Wow, it was a moment. It was just, it's inexplicable, just the weight that comes off your shoulders at that moment. Little did I know that it was the hard work to get to the pad and get to liftoff that allowed for the much, much more difficult mission for us to be able to fly that mission all the way out to the moon and then touch down. We were teasing because we were getting eaten by alligators all along the way. And what we would say is, we're turning them into snapping turtles that won't kill you. They hurt.
It might take a finger off, though. Yeah. No, that's like just getting to that point. We had done a lot of work to position, the definition of success, right? We were trying to define our success there of, 4 years of technology development, getting to the launch pad, success. Getting through MaxQ, success. Separation, success. It was just, hard fought turning those things into snapping turtles. But now that you have this definition of success, there's things that we'll sort out and talk to some other folks about, individually what happened on this mission. But you have this definition of success, right? The first mission, you can't really hide it. Like the mission was to land on the moon, right? Now, as we kind of look at, okay, well, you've landed on the moon. So the second mission, from my point of view, isn't land on the moon. It's, search for water, right? It's looking for water ice. What's going to enable us to that future? That's the way that, I view those things. But for the company, what is success? Is it something beyond Nova C? What are the things that we can take from our achievements so far in that initial success and go out, look a little bit further, and then say, okay, well, that might be far out in the future, but, in the near term, these are the steps we can take to get there. What do we have cooking in the next, ultimate success milestone while we have these, Nova C landers going to the moon? What else do we have?
We took the company public in February 15th of 2023. Exactly 1 year later, we lifted off from the launch pad. So we got ourselves, and I say also, let me connect another thought, is that we essentially, in the time it took to get an undergraduate degree, we went to the moon, 4 years. So I think we're just graduating now as a business and we got our undergraduate degree. No one will ever take that degree away from us. We stuck the landing on the moon, and we now have this amazing company that's a publicly traded company that's staffed with an amazing team that has demonstrated that it can execute on what it says it's going to do. The world is open and beyond. Space is open to us now to do anything we dream about with this foundation we created. I went all the way back to Tim's kitchen table, and now here we are with our degree. The world is open to us, like I say. So when I think about what's next is to turn this company, with the culture it has, to serve the United States and the world in terms of a national asset. We're a company that I want the future generations to look at and think about as a world that's always had it. Like you think about the Boeings and the Lockheeds and the Northrop Grummans, the Raytheons, those big companies, aerospace companies. Generations can't imagine the world without those big companies. So Intuitive Machines wants to be that. It will be that. A national asset that you can't forget. No one will ever take away the achievements that we've met to date. So the way I like to talk about it is we're creating a blueprint for moving commercially out and creating economies out in space. The lunar economy is the next economy to create. So if we can deliver things to the moon, that's Nova C, science and engineering payloads for discovery. You could deliver heavy cargo to the moon, like the LTV, like maybe the Viper rover. That delivery service is something.
But you have to have like a bigger lander, and
Yeah,
there's
we need
things
that
we have
cargo.
to evolve, right?
We have to evolve from Nova C to Nova D, maybe to Nova M, to the bigger landers. So we have our position delivering logistics up to the surface of the moon. We have the ability to communicate. So we're waiting on a big contract that we bid on last year. We've been waiting for 15 months or so to get awarded it, called the Near Space Network contract, to establish not only line of sight communications to the moon, which we have with our LDN network, but data relay satellites around the moon. So when we're flying to the moon, we're communicating using our own communications systems around the moon and on the Earth to fly those missions.
What does that give you?
Well, that gives you the ability to now conduct surface operations where you can fly things to the moon, operate them autonomously, receive data back from the moon. It gives you insight into how to move extreme mobility on the moon or to identify where precious resources are. And so you think about it. There is no other company in the world that has all three legs of the stool, that has the logistics transportation leg, the communications leg, and the autonomous operations of infrastructure on the moon. We put all three of those in place. We have laid in the groundwork for an economy in and around the moon. And that's what we are. We're about building the cislunar economy. We do it in those three ways. And each one of them is moving forward at breakneck speed. Getting ready to deploy our first comm satellite on mission 3. We're having a design review on Nova D cargo lander. We have the LTV design ongoing, the bending metal in the shop here.
Right, I just saw the terrain vehicle frame going in there.
Yeah, it's moving so quickly. So you'll see more and more and more as we come together and put all these pieces. And it started with this music in your head, right? That had to be played, and now look what it's turned into, and where we're going. So I think we put those three legs of the stool, we land upright, and we keep going. There may be a few pivots in the company moving forward, depending on what happens, but we've shown our resilience and agility as a company to move and maneuver to get to this point. So it's only up from here.
So is that you said like a blueprint, right? So if your mission right now, before, if I'd asked you this last year, was land on the moon, right? So is more so the mission now isn't necessarily only just IM2 or IM3, but the mission is to install those things on the moon. So is it fair to say like your vision is more so take that blueprint and figure out the next step?
Finish the blueprint with communications and autonomous operations on the surface. Now you have the pieces, and you've demonstrated how to build those pieces in a lean, affordable way that then can be applied maybe out to Mars and Mars orbit. You know, we have a mission going up later this year in the United States to Europa. That'd be fantastic. Why can't we imagine putting things further and further out in the solar system using the same model that we've built and demonstrated at the moon, the next frontier? And then it's limitless from where you go. beyond that. So it's pretty incredible. And I think the going public piece, just to pull back to that, was a means to an end. It was a way to build the company and accelerate the growth of the company and put it in the public's mind. And you see us. We have a stock ticker, Lunar, that's going. We see people paying attention to us, writing articles about us. We made the top most 100 influential companies of 2024. We're on the Russell 2000 index, NASDAQ index, which means they take the top 2,000 tech companies and they make index funds buy them. And that's what an index fund is, a Russell 2000. You buy into a portfolio of companies, and we're in there. So that gives us a means to see our vision through. We're not constantly fundraising. We're just executing and running a public company and growing up to be a mature tier 1 aerospace company eventually.
What was the first phone call you got after the hooray, can no longer see the rocket? What was the next line of comms that you got?
Oh, geez. We ended up, everybody had been up for a long time, especially the Orange team who was working at SpaceX facility at the Cape. And you launch and you get separation and acquisition of signal. It's all, you get time to fly back to Texas, get a couple hours sleep, and then come in for commissioning maneuver. No, it wasn't like that at all.
Right, trying to work this
problem. And Tim here, he'll pick up the story about how they saw, I think it was a Spark console, saw a flash of sunlight across a solar array, and he said, freeze that attitude. Remember that attitude. And we locked it in. We weren't pouring it towards the sun, but we got some power. And then you could just work it, what was going on with the star trackers and the error bits that they were seeing. So more to come from Dr. Crane on that.
Excellent. Well, Steve, I appreciate your time. Busiest man in the company.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It was good having you on.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Josh. It's always fun.